Welcome to Divorce TV, and I'm Susie Miller, divorce strategist, and today we have Henry Elliston, chartered financial planner, as our expert guest. We've got a shared story with Jessica Staniforth, which I think you'll find quite interesting, and healing with Susan Cowe-Miller, who will be doing some tapping, but she's going to give us a little bit of a training so we really understand a bit more about what we're doing. First, we are going to check out the news. Hindustan Times. First, we've got the High Court sets aside divorce as woman could not appear in case due to pandemic. So the Delhi High Court has set aside the divorce granted to a man on the grounds that his wife was unable to appear before the family court and state her case during the COVID-19 pandemic. The court was hearing a plea by a woman who had challenged a September the 24th, 2020 judgment of the family court that had granted a divorce in favour of her husband. I presume that means financially in favour. On March the 16th, 2020, when the matter was fixed before the family court, the pandemic had already set in and functioning of courts was also severely restricted. In fact, the court subordinate to this court was specifically instructed not to pass any adverse orders against those who could not appear either physically or in proceedings through video conferencing due to the pandemic, a bench of justices have said. The bench sent the case back to the family court and asked the court to hear it from the stage when the woman, through her counsel, was declared ex parte. The couple got married in February 2013. They were living separately since March 2013, so they weren't together very long. They have a son, and the husband had filed the divorce petition alleging cruelty. So, have you been disadvantaged by cases going online? Share your story. It'd be really. I know that. Obviously time lapses there may have been time consequences, but have you not been able to get on? Did your Zoom not work? Have you had any experiences that you just think, well, it wasn't fair, I wish I could have a rerun of that one? Just pop it in the comments. Now, second story. This is from the Financial Times. Silver splitters count the cost of divorce. So if you're my age and up, this is for you. The number of silver splitters in the UK is rising according to the Office for National Statistics. In the decade from 2005 to 2015, the number of men divorcing aged 65 and over rose 23%, with a 38% increase for women. Divorce is difficult at any age, but the financial implications are more complicated when marriages end later in life. Later life breakups generally mean considering more complex financial affairs, says Keith Richards, Chief Executive of trade body the Personal Finance Society. It often involves dividing a greater amount of assets such as the family home, pensions, maintenance and tax planning, as well as legal advice. The challenges involved, they often mean professional financial advice is vital to reach an agreement where both parties have a realistic expectation of what their new single status means for their later life. Especially if they're retired. Second time lucky, according to the question mark, it says according to the ONS, remarriage for those aged 65 plus rose 46% from 2007 to 2017. But later life love comes with later life complications. So, for example, you may want to protect any inheritance for children from a previous marriage. Setting up a discretionary trust could help. Sorting out wills. Divorce does not revoke an existing will as marriage does. However, it does change how former spouses are treated in law, affecting any gifts to the surviving spouse and preventing them from acting as executors. In our workshops that we've got coming up in April and in June, we've got Artie from Weller's Law. She'll be there talking specifically, answering questions on wills and anything to do with that area where you really do have to know your stuff, because you can get into a right old mess otherwise. Recent research by the Pensions Policy Institute found the average divorced woman has less than a third of the pension wealth of the average divorced man. There are other factors. Research by Gretel found 29% of women have had 4 or more big life events, such as becoming a parent, working part-time, taking a career break, or changing career to accommodate caring responsibilities, compared to just 4% of men. This means women have a higher likelihood of a lower state pension because of gaps in their national insurance contributions and a greater number of smaller pension pots. Also, women who reach state pension age before rule changes in April 2016 in the UK should check whether their state pension entitlement changes as a result of divorcing. Ultimately, both parties must reassess their income generation in retirement rather than hoping for the best. And when we talk later with Henry Elliston, we might have a quick chat about all of this, because chartered financial planners become your best friend when you're divorcing anyway, but definitely if you're a silver splitter. Last but not least, The Sun has crying shame. Kelly Clarkson has been sobbing uncontrollably over her nasty divorce from ex Brandon Blackstock and feels so alone. It's very sad. This sources told OK she's not in the best place emotionally. One day she just started crying uncontrollably. She felt so lost, so alone. That's when she knew she'd hit rock bottom. Insiders continued, Kelly is stunned that things have taken such a nasty turn. All she wanted was to get out of the relationship, but Brandon's made it extremely difficult to walk away peacefully, allegedly. According to OK, insiders shared Kelly is stressed to the max. She's worried about how much the divorce is going to cost her, while trying to keep the kids shielded from the explosive family drama. It's getting apparently quite messy. It's shocking to those who knew them as a couple, but it's hard for them to be civil. Relations between Kelly and Brandon have gotten even more bitter since the lawsuits. Well, they very rarely make things more peaceful. She doesn't trust him, and he feels she's thrown him to the wolves. The sources shared Kelly's 2 children she shares with Brandon. River Rose, 6, and son Remington, 4, are helping her through this very hard time. They shared, hard as it may be, Kelly's finding strength doing mundane things at home with River and Remington. She bakes cookies, draws with them, reads them bedtime stories. Those moments remind her that there's a lot of good in her life, and she's holding on to that with everything she has. Kelly filed for divorce from Brandon in June after 7 years of marriage. With especially children that young, it's quite tragic that they seem to be getting a bit nasty about this. But we have the solution, Kelly. We have a workshop for especially for people who are divorcing a difficult spouse on the 15th of April, and you're very welcome to come along. I'll even happy to give you a free ticket, and maybe we can help you turn this messy divorce around. And right on cue, we have Henry Elliston, who is a chartered financial planner. Henry's part of the divorce squad, who often send people his way. Henry does some amazing work. So a lot of what you do, I leverage to help with peaceful divorces. But we've got a workshop coming up, haven't we, in April on the 15th, where it's specifically aimed at those where they might be trying really hard for it to be peaceful, but it's all really probably in many cases got a bit messy, or they're divorcing someone who's very, very difficult. But there's an awful lot that you can do as a chartered financial planner, isn't there, to help even those really, really tricky divorces?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think, of course there is, but I think it's also worthwhile questioning why these exes have suddenly all of us become difficult and hard to deal with. And I think in some parts it's probably just because they have become awkward and hard to deal with in old age, and being married for a while has got them down. But I think in other cases, hopefully, the person that you originally fell in love with, you may no longer love, but they haven't become a complete ogre in that time. And perhaps they've become difficult because they're getting scared and worried and panicked about the divorce and about how it's going to affect them. And what I find from my dealings with all the clients that I work with going through this process is that if you can remove this, and Susie, you know this really well too, if you can remove that fear, people tend to make much more rational, sane decisions, and they're not driven by anger. And anger means you go and grab onto everything and you hold onto it as tight as possible, rather than saying, do I need this actually? Because if I'm happy to give that up, but I get this thing, or whatever the case may be, that better decisions are made, and you reach consensus that much more quickly and that much more peacefully and happily. So I think that's important. But yeah, you're right. So, but how do we go about it? And what do we do? I think it's interesting, isn't it? because if you've got someone who's really angry, it's quite hard to bring them to the table, and to reason with them. And so, yes, so I think in some circumstances, and we've spoken previously about how I work with both sides at times, but of course we can work with just the one party if that's the only party that's going to come to the table. It's the only option we've got. It's true to say that we would need to know everybody's finances. We can help a little bit if we've got one half of the story, but the reality is we can never really get to grips with things unless we know the full picture.
But you'll always end up with that at some point, won't you? Because they kind of legally obliged to do disclosure. You just hope that you don't have to use the courts to sort of. But I think it's a good point to make, though, that anyone who is coming to work with you, I always encourage people to gather as many figures together as they can, and quite often they do know quite a lot about their spouse, and they can always make an educated guess and fill in the gaps later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm working with a couple of clients at the moment where the spouse hasn't given everything over yet, and probably they might not do until they've had a couple of mediation sessions, and as you say, the Form E is being completed and what have you. But most people know most things about their spouses. I mean, I've also worked with some where all sorts of things seem to have been squirreled away, and actually they haven't got any hope of finding out. But those tend to be few and far between. Most people know I've got a mortgage. I roughly owe £250,000 on the mortgage, and he's got a job, and I think he probably earns about £70,000 a year, and he's probably been saving towards his company pension scheme or what have you. So most people normally have a reasonable idea or understanding of what they're dealing with.
Would you agree, though, if someone's thinking about divorce, that whilst they're still married, before they start the divorce process, it's a really good time to gather data, because it's going to really help both the couple in the end, because unfortunately the one who holds back is usually just costing themselves money and legal fees, aren't they? It's, at the end of the day, you're finding a solution that's usually going to be the best option for both of them, especially if they have a family.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think I was talking to somebody recently who had got to mediation, and they still hadn't got financial disclosure done. And by the end of the first mediation session, the husband just walked out. And he walked out just because no plan had been put in place yet. No one had really discussed it. And by the end of it, the mediator said, well, I think the wife should have the house. And he was like, what? So she gets the house, gets kids, gets the money. And that was enough for him, and off he went. Mm. But actually, if we roll it back, when we understand the financial position, we'll be able to put a sensible idea forward, so that she, the wife, can take this to the husband, probably even before mediation, in truth, and say, look, I've come up with 2 or 3 different ideas. And she probably does need the house to start with, because she's going to be looking after the kids for most of the time, and not obviously, she won't be able to afford the mortgage on her own. But it might be the right thing for her to stay in the house for the next couple of years, and then for them to sell the house. But actually, it's the understanding that the husband will get some of the house at some point in the future, and that he's not going to be completely left out on his ear. And actually, in him understanding that, will break down walls, it breaks down barriers. And that brings him back into the conversation, and means he's not going to be quite the unpleasant character that he's making himself out to be at the outset of this whole process.
Because actually he's probably terrified, financially terrified. Yeah, and who can blame him? So and you brought up a good point there. So I'm always encouraging people I always say them to see you before they go to mediation, because then they've got something to mediate. But when we've got a situation where people are finding it very difficult to use mediation, or being dragged into court by the other spouse who's just refusing to use mediation or even collaborative divorce, then being able to have that plan laid out, it's not just a mediator who would find it useful. Presumably a judge would too, because if that's vital information that's going to be helping their case, isn't it? The person who's been working with you.
And it works both ways, of course. I mean, that last example was about the husband being scared, but of course, if it's a similar situation, if it's the wife is scared because she doesn't know how she's going to be able to live, she hasn't got the income to survive on. She might need some sort of spousal maintenance, and of course, the husband's going to put his foot down and go, "You ain't getting anything." But actually, in putting that to the judge and saying, look, he earns £100,000. I'm looking after his 3 children at home, and I have got a part-time bookkeeping job. But in truth, I can only do it part-time, and I can only earn £5,000 a year from doing it. He's got to support me. And here are the facts and figures that support that. Then it makes the judge's job, be careful, judge's job so much easier, because he can say, oh, actually, yeah, I can see that despite the fact that the husband here has clearly inflated his cost of living and he doesn't need to go to the Maldives for 3 holidays a year, there is sufficient income in this pot to provide a sensible spousal maintenance to the wife. And
people don't
so it works both ways.
Because people don't realise, do they, that often the judges they're not financial experts, are they? They're just trying to do the best they can, sometimes with a limited amount of training in the financial area. And so if you as someone goes in as a divorcing person and can give them the information that you've compiled for them, you are not just making it better for the judge, but you're definitely making it better for themselves and taking a lot of the heat out of it, because there's nothing to argue about, really, is there? That's why I would say to people, you can see the figures, you can't argue with the figures. So I do think that with Kelly Clarkson, with things getting so messy with her divorce, let's use that as an example, she's I believe, rumour has it that they've had issues around the children, but also there are sort of financial things that maybe she owes somebody some money and all kinds of stuff floating around, and it can be, you can have lots of these different complexities. Have you got you're able to help, as far as I understand, really bring all of that into a sort of sensible perspective and pin people down. Do you find that quite often the clients you're working with, it's quite chaotic in their minds, and they actually, what they really need is just someone to say, let's get all this together, let's make some sense out of it? And it's not always rocket science, that the work that you're, even though you're very clever, often it's quite basic stuff.
Very kind of you. Yes. And I think the reason that I see that, like most of the clients, it is really chaotic, and it's because so many things are going on in their mind all the time. I've got to keep the house. I've got to live somewhere. How am I going to feed myself? Who's going to look after the children? Where are the kids going to live? Do I need to move home? Where am I going to move? How much is that going to cost? There's millions of things just going everywhere, and actually, so much of the time it can just be condensed into really what's your cost of living? And what are the assets? And if we've got those 2 answers, we can then take a step back, take the emotion out of it, and say, actually, you can do it. Or, do you know what? I know you really want to stay in this house, but the reality is you can't. And when you take away the variables and we turn them into known solutions and known answers, actually, it just makes the whole conundrum, it brings it all together. And that allows you to just come away with an answer that says, all right, look, I wanted to keep the house, but we've worked through it, and sadly, there's just no way that this is actually going to work. There's only so much money in the pot. We can't always make it happen. There's debts that need to be looked after, and both parties might have to cover the cost of those debts. But again, if we know what's there, then it's all right, because we can answer it. And then you don't have all these millions of different things all going around in your head the whole time, because you know where you've got to. I think it's interesting with Kelly Clarkson. I suspect that she's worth quite a lot of money. So it's interesting, isn't it, that it goes the whole way through the spectrum from those people who, sadly are on, universal credit, all the way through to multimillionaires. There's no easy. It doesn't get any easier for anybody when they're going through this, and the fear is there, whether you're trying to split a tin of baked beans or whether or not you're trying to split a $20 million fortune.
Yes. But the message is that particularly if you've got a $20 million fortune, if they work with a financial planner and look at the numbers and just sort it out and cut a deal, rather than kind of trying to hide things and argue the toss over this, that and the other and use the courts. And I just do feel that that's a message that's really important that we need to get out there to people. Just to finish with the workshop that's coming up, we'll be with lawyers and the wellbeing side. We'll be covering parenting and obviously financials. With the financial side of things, could you just say a little bit about how people can work with you? Because you've got the QR code there. So just if someone's thinking, I think I need to talk to Henry, what do they need to do first?
Well, they go to the QR code. I'm trying to make my fingers go in there, but there we go. Have a look at the QR code. I mean, the way that we work normally is we start off. The QR code will just take you through to a Calendly link, and we start off with like a half-hour chat on the phone. And the point and the purpose of that chat is for me to build a sort of an overriding picture of the position that you're in to see that we can help. After that, what we do is we need to sit down and have a proper meeting on Zoom then, assuming I can help and we can do plans. And basically, if you own something like a house and something like a pension, I can probably help you.
Yes.
It's a kind of fundamental part to it. But then we sit down on Zoom and it depends upon how far along the process that you've got. But if you're right at the beginning of the process, the first part is going to be, let's get the figures, the facts, the finances out and straight. And if that's just for your side and not for their side because they're not engaging and they're being difficult, that's okay. Let's just do it with you. So let's work through. Let's get a pension valuation. Let's write off to your mortgage lender and find out how much you've still got outstanding on the loan. Should we go and get an estate agent round to come and value your house? Have you got any savings or investments? Do we know where they are? Can we work out what's in them? And then let's spend lots of time going through how much money you're going to need to live, to carry on living in the future. And when we've got those building blocks in place, then we can start putting a plan together that we can either present or we can bring the other side in to come and help with if we can convince them to do so.
Which is obviously to their benefit, but it can be, yeah, absolutely. Saves them a fortune if they can just see, oh yeah, this is a good way to split it, and everyone's happy, which does happen sometimes. I always tell people, I know it may not always happen, but it does happen, and you've had that experience, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh no, and it's great when it does. I mean, I think that's the thing. Everyone has to remember that ultimately, the legal system, especially, they're just trying to create a fairly reasonable split. And that's what we're all trying to get to. And the quicker you can get to that answer, the better and cheaper.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Henry. And see you soon. Brilliant. Yeah, Henry's a key member of the team on the 14th of April, which is a Thursday evening when we're doing our next workshop, which is specifically for people who are divorcing a difficult spouse. And now we're going to move forward to a very short masterclass. I just wanted to round off about accountability, because accountability, it may not be everyone's favourite subject, but it's actually long and so important that it's gone over for 2 episodes. But I did want to overload it last week, but there's a couple of things I did want to just add on about that. And just for those who perhaps didn't see last week's holding yourself accountable is absolutely key to getting your divorce back under control, whether it's with the co-parenting or also with the finances as well. And particularly this little bit I want to talk about was how to hold yourself accountable for the way you behave as a co-parent, and particularly with regard to the way perhaps you talk about the other spouse with the children. I was telling a story how my kids used to police me and tell me off when I slipped, which was brilliant for me, because it's easy to do. So I just want to add a kind of couple of suggestions here. So one was that perhaps you give a certain friend, because probably best not to use your children, a certain friend permission to pull you up if you do negative talk about your ex or yourself as well, actually, and because you need to break the habit. So it might be there's a kind of trigger word. So if they catch you starting to bitch or whinge, they, instead of joining in, which unfortunately some of them will do, they say something like, I don't know, potato, something like that. Just breaks the pattern, and you remember, like, oh damn, because it can be such a habit. So and the only person who can break that is you. So holding yourself accountable for that and getting other people to help you is a really smart move. Also, how about giving yourself a score at the end of the day? Maybe keep a journal to how many times, not how many times you've slagged off your ex, but about how all your successes, how well you've done, because we really need to hold ourselves accountable as well for our successes and for what we do well. That's particularly important, and you should celebrate that as well. Because if you don't notice these things and reward yourself, no one else is likely to do it. Now we're preparing now for our shared stories are always interesting, but we've got an intriguing one coming up, which I think you'll enjoy. So I'm now welcoming in Jessica to the show. Hello, Jessica.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
And I think it's your first time on the show, isn't it?
It is indeed my first time here, yeah, definitely.
Excellent. So I think probably the best way to start is to tell everyone what your profession is and a little bit about the story you're going to share with us.
Yeah, so I am a sex educator and a sex coach. So I help mainly women and couples and talking with them and communicating and educating them around sex, intimacy and relationships.
So I presume a lot of your clients would be people who are actually helping them to have a happy and long marriage.
So yeah, I mean there is a lot of it, because I mean a lot of around sex can be a problem, which is actually the story I'm going to talk about. From a past client, which that can be the end of a relationship, but it can also, if it's spoken about and talked about, actually be be something that obviously we can work on to extend the relationship as well. Yeah.
So what's the story you're going to share with us today?
So so I just want to talk about sex is, I think, and I have found in my experience, very much still on the mind, what the future holds with our intimate relationships. And the saying "it takes a tribe" is obviously, it's very important. We do look for, as human beings, we look for the comfort and closeness of others. It might be family, but it also might be that trusting partner that you're looking to the future for that. And so the story I want to share about is a client. So she spent basically years, 10 long years in a sexless marriage. So it means she didn't have sex, maybe special occasions, once or twice a year, and often blamed that on herself. So that lack of sex and relationship on herself, whether she wasn't feeling up to it. Her husband would work late. A big one that I find quite a lot, that they would go to bed at different times, and it's like you can't stay up. There's just hit that point, don't you? Just like, I'm done, I'm asleep, and you try your hardest. She couldn't keep, she just couldn't stay awake and wait for him to come to bed. There was also, which actually is really prevalent, she didn't find it enjoyable, and there's a real lack of skill, and that's actually happens a lot with a lack of skill between partners. She was going through the same old positions, places, all that kind of thing. And as I said before, it often ended up with her being really unsatisfied in the relationship and in her sexual experiences. And what was really important, what we talked about, what we gathered from that, is actually there was a massive lack of intimacy, because sometimes sex isn't all about what a marriage or a partnership is all about. Intimacy is really important as well. The cuddles, the kissing, the affection part of it. Unfortunately, that was also missing for her as well. And I think that's really where a lot of the, how the relationship degraded, and where the separation finally, stemmed from. Mm-hmm. And what it brought up was a lot of questions on her self-confidence. So a lot of questions on that. Before marriage, she was really, she was very sexual, and obviously go through this long-term period where she's like, she wasn't allowed to be. She's then come out the other side of this, asking a lot of questions. How did she now deal with sex? It was still important to her, but how, what about the baggage she now has? She's older, that kind of thing. Did she have to wait a certain amount of time? Did she only have to have sex with someone who she wanted a relationship with? So all these questions kind of, circle in the mind, and it comes down, a lot of these questions get stuck on our head because of in the culture that we live in. Unfortunately, there's a lot of shame, especially for women and their sexuality, that we question a lot of ourselves on it. We hide it. behind closed doors. We're not meant to talk about it. We're not meant to raise concerns about it, and it could be really, a judgment issue as well. And yeah, so she was remembering a lot of these negative parts of her relationship, and it wasn't helping. It wasn't helping her confidence. The times that she would ask herself, "Did he not find me attractive?" Or noticing that he didn't look at her anymore.
Can I just say that after 10 years of hardly any sex except maybe on a birthday, that I would have thought you'd be traumatized actually going out into the world to maybe date again. That's a tough one.
It's a massive thing. And going into that relationship, as I said, she was quite a sexual person. She was very positive, and she said the stories. She was very much like upbeat about it. And they had, before they got married, they had quite a good sex life. And what happened, even she couldn't tell me, but it obviously just went down. And you're right, and that confidence level just is absolutely shot. So basically she came to me because, being a sexual being, she wanted to talk this out and work out how that she went from this really confident person to who she is now, and how she gets that confidence back, and looking at that in actually, and what you'll probably find this as well quite a lot in any work as well we do, that a lot of it does really come down to education. A lot of it comes down to the learning about what you've missed and what's out there, as much as anything else, and also the permission giving. You're allowed to feel that, but now let's bring it back in, and let's look at that and think it through. And that's what we really talked about. Talked about how ways we could build up her confidence. And one of those things is actually really importantly for women, especially coming out of relationships, is I think we forget that that we're allowed to self-love, that we're allowed to experience pleasure with ourselves. We don't need that that partner for that, and I think that can really reconnect us with our with sexuality, and going down that route. And so I educated her through these processes of how to basically go back into a way of self-love and confidence, and feeling good about herself without a partner first, before then obviously
definitely the right way round.
I mean, it is, and it's a shame, because I think we put so much, because again she put a lot of that blame on herself, and of course it's it's no one's, you can't level these things up. There's no balance here of like exactly who was to fault when it comes to these things, but it's about getting that confidence back and kind of going, do you know what, you need to take care of yourself, and there's ways to do that, and to bring that confidence up and to really reconnect with that sexuality. And
so how does the story end? What happened?
Well, I'm pleased to say that yes, she she doesn't have a partner at the moment, but she does enjoy plenty of the pleasures that we talked about, that we went through. And actually, one way we talked about, which is really interesting, is how to express herself. Is she started to write erotic fiction, and now she's actually looking at how that might turn into something that she wants to kind of do and put forward as something now to express herself as well. So yeah, she's got that confidence back, and perhaps even a career. I don't know. You never know. Awesome. That's
a brilliant story, and I'm really pleased that I think the work you do is really important, because society would push her to go out and just date, and if you're starting out in that place of no confidence, you're not going to attract the best partners. So now at least she can just have fun and hopefully attract much better potential mates. Absolutely. If that ends up being what she wants to do. Absolutely. That was so lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much, and maybe see you again with another story at another time.
Indeed. See you later.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
And we are just doing a quick bit of roulette here. We've got this in the app. Lots of people are coming into the app now, which is great. And just to let you know, if you do come, it's free. Best Way to Divorce app. QR code there will take you there. And there is I must update this actually, because we've got a free group now as well, that you can just come in and catch up with stuff. And the other one we've also got now as well is the podcast. So these shows also go out as an iTunes podcast. So if you don't want to watch the the videos, you can always subscribe to the Best Way to Divorce podcast, or the easy way is you just open the app and then bam, you can click in and play the latest one just from your phone. Moving forwards now. I mentioned the workshop earlier that Henry's going to be part of. We've got the wills expert, Artie, we've got lawyers, we've got experts on very difficult people. Some people call them narcissists, and other great experts, all going to be together in the workshop. But it's going to be specifically, this one in April, focused on those of you who are divorcing someone who's tricky, because there's a few extra strategies and ways of doing it that you'll need. So, and all the experts involved offer a complimentary session or call with you, so that they can see if they can help you as well. So it's very, very, it's not just a webinar with lots of people, it's limited numbers. Nearly half the places have already gone. So if you want to come onto that on the 15th of April, you better book your tickets soon. Prepare now for our healing. We are having a healing with Susan. She's going to be educating us a little bit and giving us a bit more knowledge about emotional freedom techniques. So we've got a bit more understanding, and she'll give us a little routine to do as well. And Susan, welcome. Hang on a sec, I've got to put you on there. I've got your sound now. Lovely to see you.
Good.
Excellent.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Brilliant. So I love your blue cardi, by the way. It looks it's nice, or jumper. It's a nice colour. And
Jumper.
so you're going to do what with us today?
I'm going to explain the tapping points more slowly, because some people might think, oh, I don't know what she's doing, or I can't do that. So we're going to be learning the tapping points slowly, and then going into a routine to see how stress you can feel better after 2-3 rounds of EFT.
Brilliant. So we're gonna finish off with a de-stress exercise that we could do
Absolutely,
pretty much
yeah.
any place, anywhere, more or less.
Oh yeah, this is for the quick fix, and you can do this anywhere. You can even, we're not doing the under the table fingertip points, but this can be done, at a meeting with the fingertip points. That's a whole other lesson. Very
excellent.
simple.
Brilliant. I shall take you. You're going to give you the floor now.
Okay. Hi everyone. Tonight I'm going to take you on a little EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping experience. My background's in teaching, and we can end tonight's show with a little therapeutic journey as we practice some EFT. Now, sometimes, as I said, you may be concerned that you've no idea what you're supposed to do. Well, tonight, a little lesson with benefits. So do please take advantage. Now, for the moment, just please start and follow what I say, and I'll tell you eventually to repeat a short statement, but not quite at the moment. We're going to go through the points first, and while we're doing that, I'll share the information. And when you're doing this, you will and can feel quieter and in a more restful place. We use our fingertips, and you can change hands whenever you fancy it. You can change the side of the face that you're tapping, and you can do the same with whatever side of the body you're on. We've only got 2 body points. And when we tap very gently. While I'm starting, can you please, we're not going to do much with the karate point tonight, but start tapping your karate point. And then we're going to start with the top of the head point. Fingertips, very gently, while I do some explaining. I'll tell you when we're moving through the points. It's like psychological acupuncture, because we're working on energy meridians, energy channels, helping you to release stressors, fears and anxieties, and we're gently tapping. The next point, we've got 3 points actually on round the eye socket. So we're doing the eye point nearest the nose, and just tap it gently, ever so gently. I'll tell you when to move on. If you get tired of doing it, just stop and listen. Because these blocks to success, these blocks to feeling good, or blocks to feeling empowered, we need to clear them to get on with what's ahead. And we're going to go through the points and I'll share the information. Let's move to the side of the eye, please. Not away over here. The eye socket, side of the eye. And we're going to go through all the points, but we're going to practice a few rounds as well, and then you can experience the potential of this very well-respected technique. Tonight, we're doing the quick fix. 5 minutes, you can go from feeling unable to walk out the door to thinking, I've got this. At a transformational level with clients, I can work for weeks and months with people with big stress issues. Now, the next point is underneath the eye socket. Very gently, tapping gently, and I will at some point ask you where you feel a sensation, and that sensation is a blocked energy. Underneath the nose is another point. Very gently. And I'll ask you if you can give this sensation of discomfort when I try to give you a little trigger, what the intensity is between 1 and 10. If it's 10, you've probably chosen too big a one, and I would rather you'd chosen a smaller one. But we're going with this anyway. Then there's a point in the chin. And I'll ask you if it's got a shape or a colour, because you may see a shape or a colour. You may sense a shape or a colour. Then we move on to a very good point along the collarbone. But just tap, just find a spot on the collarbone area, the base of the collarbone, I suggest. It is. It's not away up here. It's, how can you see it? It's on the base of the collarbone. And we're tapping in these energy channels. And when energy releases during a tapping routine, then you may find that you're yawning, burping, or your tummy rumbles. There's a sense when I do my tapping, when I'm following someone else, I yawn very quickly. Then the last point we're doing is, if you're a lady, it's the brass strap area. It's underneath the arm. And we don't thump it. That's not the plan. We're stimulating energy channels. And actually, all these channels that we're tapping have specific emotions that they're very good at. One point is better for such and such, but I don't have time for that. So I would like you now to start tapping and repeating what I say, please. Sometimes I don't feel at ease. So you're repeating, sometimes I don't feel at ease. Corner of the eye. I can feel stressed. Especially if I think about, what could you be thinking about that could set you off? Especially if I think about underneath the eye. That doesn't make me feel good. I can feel that unease. Where can you feel that unease? You're tapping this point. I'm asking you a question. Where do you feel this unease when you think about what you might be feeling stressed about? Where do you feel it in your body? Now you'll know that like a snap of a finger. If it takes you any longer, you're not feeling it. You've got to go with your first thought. So now let's do the chin point. And this unease has a number. What's the number, please, out of 10? You've thought about something. You can feel it in your body. What's its number out of 10? Collarbone point. This stressful feeling. Repeat. This stressful feeling. I feel it where? And it's a number what? Back up to the top of the head, please. I'm going to move a little bit faster, make it more fluid now. This, and you're repeating, this stressful feeling. It can stop me moving forward. That's pretty useless. I want to be organising things. I need to sort things out. Where are you feeling it? Where are you feeling it? What number is it? Has it moved the number? Just be aware. I don't like this feeling. I don't like this feeling at all. So we're going back up to the top of the head. You're repeating what I'm saying. I need to reduce this stress and anxiety. I can choose to let some of this horrible feeling go. Side of the eye. I release this debilitating feeling right now. I let it go. Why would I hold on to that? Sorry, Scottish accent. Why would I hold on to that? I'm releasing some or all of this pain. It serves me no purpose. Letting it go. Allowing myself to release this stress. Letting it go. Releasing. Letting it go. Letting it go. I have a choice. And this feels so much better. I feel more at peace. Now, take 2, 3, 4 deep breaths. Close your eyes for a moment. Take good breaths, because you can choose. Just listen to what I'm saying. You can choose to release stress. Catch yourself as you fall into the stress reaction. I help and support people on this journey. When you're going through the divorce journey, you know, emotions need sorted. Don't leave it till afterwards. Make sure that after it all, you're fit to do whatever you want to do. So Susie, that's me. Thank you. I hope it was worthwhile for people who might catch this.
That was lovely. I started at 8, I went down to 6, and then I reckon it was at least 3. It's amazing. I don't know how it works. It does. It's amazing. Thank you so much, Susan, and get you back on the show again soon. So here we come again to the end of another show in the war of divorce, on the battlefield of family separation. Always, always make peace your weapon of choice.